A new trial. The state Supreme Judicial Court ruled today that a judge must decide whether racist remarks by jurors tainted LaGuer's trial back in 1983. John Hashimoto reports.
The issue that I wish to argue concerns allegations that the jury considered racial and ethnic matters and other extraneous matters during their deliberations.
In January, Benjamin LaGuer's attorney presented a convincing case of jury misconduct to the Supreme Judicial Court. At issue, an affidavit signed by one juror claiming another had tainted LaGuer's 1983 conviction by making repeated racist remarks during his trial. Today, the SJC agreed that the allegations of racism are troubling enough to require a re-examination of the case nearly 8 years after the fact.
I think that they were just uncomfortable and well should be with the idea that juries can return verdicts based not on the evidence, but on whether or not what their opinion is based on a person's race or national origin.
LaGuer was 20 years old when he was arrested in 1983 for the brutal attack of a Leominster widow. Even though there was no physical evidence to prove his guilt, LaGuer was identified by the victim as the attacker. 6 days after the trial began, he was found guilty of rape, robbery, and assault by an all-white, all-male jury. He was sentenced to life.
Before you convict a person and sentence him for the term of life, you should study a case as thorough as I study it before you impose that sentence.
Determined to prove his innocence, LaGuer learned the law and appealed his case no less than 3 times, pointing out that the victim in his case was a diagnosed schizophrenic and as such a questionable witness. But it was a 1986 affidavit in which one juror alleges racism by another that has proved a turning point in LaGuer's case. That affidavit was signed by juror William Nowick.
The racial slurs that Benji did get from the jury was either he was a black spick or a spick, mainly spick most of the time. That a spick could go on loving a woman night and day and couldn't stop.
In their ruling today, the SJC justices wrote that, quote, "We conclude that the trial judge ought to conduct a hearing to determine the truth or falsity of Nowick's affidavit as it bears on the juror's ethnic bias. They concluded that if the affidavit is found to be essentially true, LaGuer should be entitled to a new trial." LaGuer talked to the 10 o'clock news today from North Central Correctional Institute in Gardner.
I was hoping that it would be a matter of a new trial. But since they have decided to allow Judge Mulkern to investigate the allegations involved, that is fine with me. I have always been willing to let anybody willing and having the desire to investigate the case, because that's what it's been all about.
The charges in William Nowick's affidavit by no means go unchallenged. The juror he implicates, Joseph Novak, now 71 years old, told us by phone tonight that he did not make racist remarks during LaGuer's trial and that he would take a lie detector test to prove it. He also said he voted to convict LaGuer because the victim identified him in court.
Do you think there's any possibility that these charges or these allegations that racist remarks were made are untrue?
I am hoping that when we have the evidentiary hearing, that the jurors can come forward and everybody can have their say and side of the story told. Once that is done, I think that we'll be able at the end to determine what happened.
LaGuer's evidentiary hearing will be held within the next few months, with LaGuer likely in attendance. If Judge Mulkern rules that juror William Nowick is indeed credible, it will then be up to the Worcester County District Attorney to decide whether or not to retry LaGuer for an 8-year-old crime he says he did not commit. For the 10 o'clock news, I'm John Hashimoto.